Welcome everybody to the third episode of what spec you should main, why you should main it, how you should main it, when you should main it.
It's very important to know why you should main a Warlock in 10.1, specifically Demonology Warlock, because there's a lot of things there. I mean, things are basically demons, a lot of them, and they do stuff because that's why Demonology is so great. But will it be one of the best specs to play in 10.1? We have Flame here, first of all, to talk about it. We have Sunshade somewhere here.
Ah, Sunshade over there. Hi, Sunshade.
Hello. So
right here.
We're gonna talk about why Demonology Warlock is something you could potentially main, and if it will be something that Flame could potentially main as well. Now, right off the bat, let's throw on a first question. Does the spec fulfill the fantasy?
Oh, let's let Sunshade answer this as well, since I happen to know that it's her favorite.
Oh, she plays Demonology too. Yeah, I forgot all that.
It is actually my favorite spec in the entire game. It does fulfill the fantasy. You have so many demons. You summon demons. You make nether portals. You have all sorts of minions to do things for you. It is amazing. Not great for raid leading, but
was about to say, because we had the Biamonte discussion, and since you're our raid leader, you kind of need the freedom to be able to do stuff. And I actually don't think Demonology gives you that kind of a freedom. I don't know if it's the most complicated Warlock spec, but it definitely might have to
I think it is,
a little bit more.
or
not
maybe
necessarily complicated, but
Nether portal.
think of it like this. For Demonology, at least in Shadowlands, I raid lit from a Demonology Warlock for a little bit, and you needed like 20 seconds to just pop demons and pop them and pop them and pop them, and then you're Tyrant, and by that time, your raid would be dead because you didn't call anything because you were just looking at your spells.
Add Nether portal to that. It's an amazing time. But yeah, in terms of the fantasy, I do have a point to add here, since it's been something that I've been looking at for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of Demonology Warlocks have been looking at a long time, and this is a controversial topic, and that is Nether portal. Since it was added in Legion in the BFA pre-patch, I remember to this day I thought that was the coolest fantasy that a Warlock can do, is rip open a portal and summon a gazillion demons.
I agree, and it's lovely to see that.
Yeah, especially with the bit lore now.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh my god, it was slapping so hard at the start of Dragonflight.
Oh yeah, it's I have it on good authority. It might be slapping also pretty hard next season, but it is a very in-depth playstyle to get into. Not a lot of people like it. Thankfully, what they've done recently, if you have seen Demonology and thought, man, but I don't want to play Nether portal, they have added what is it, unending hatred or something. It's a different capsule that you can take. It's a passive. It simplifies the playstyle. You don't have to go on any Nether portal. You might lose 1% single target damage if your aim is to get the min-max stuff, but you hate Nether portal. You have the option, and I think Demonology does that really well, where it can give you like, okay, I really want to play with all my demons. I'm fine if it's complicated, or I just want to chill. I don't want to have to worry. I don't want to have to be punished if I have to move and break my cycle. You also have that. You have the passive simplicity build and the super in-depth build with the demons. And I think a lot more specs should do this right now. 10.1.
All right, relax, Nicholas. So let me throw in this question, because I'm gonna be the noob here and ask, how does a Demonology Warlock work? How do you make it work? How does it deal damage? You know, synthesize,
it does.
please.
It puts the imps to work.
Of course it does. But seriously though,
Unless
I want to
you
know.
blow them up with an implosion.
That's the ultimate backstab or front stab.
Can I get a goddamn answer already?
Yeah, so
Yes.
Demonology is very similar to Beast Mastery, where you kind of control your demons depending on which demons you summon. They do different damage profiles, single target AoE. You can also blow them up like Sunshade said, or summon big ones, very big ones that really hurt the bosses.
What about shards? Can you talk about shards? How does the spec work, man?
You have your builders and you have your spenders, like
Thank you.
most of your classes, right? Warlock uses both mana and soul shards. You use your mana for not so many things. It's just always there. But your soul shards give your better spells, like your Hand of Gul'dan, which is also a AoE. You summon your pets with soul shards. You summon your gateways with soul shards. There's a lot of things you use soul shards on, so you always need to have your demon bolts, which give you soul shards. Luckily, your imps kind of proc it, so you are pretty good on the move sometimes, unless you're in your opener or you're building for your tyrant. When you build for your tyrant, what you want to do is have as many and as big pets active as possible, and then you drop your tyrant. And then your tyrant is going to do big damn. Not as much as it used to right now, but that's the simplest way to explain it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And how does the soul shard generation go with demonology? Warlock? Because soul shards is something that all warlocks have, right? It's like the resource all warlock specs have. Does it feel clunky? Does it feel slow? Do you have like different options to go for maybe accelerating the soul shard generation? Because it sounds like you need a lot of soul shards to like be able to pump out demons and pump out the damage. How does that work?
It's actually very similar to Holy Power for Paladin. Demonology actually has the easiest way of getting soul shards, the most reliable way. You just cast Shadow Bolts.
There you go.
And you generate the soul shards, and you spend the soul shards, as opposed to Affliction that has to generate it on a proc based, and on Deathstroke that generates like little tiny bits by little tiny bits.
Right.
Demonology is probably the
Rain
most
of fire.
responsive for that. So yeah, if the soul shard stuff is something that I want to kind of figure out exactly how to get into the system, Demonology is actually the best spec to get into, because it makes more sense. It's the simplest way. Shadow Bolts and Demon Bolts.
This yet another reason why you should play Demonology instead of Affliction or Destruction in this regard. Is Demonology Warlock a spec you would take in any type of content, PvE-wise?
So far, yeah. So far, in the way that it's designed and the damage profile and all the tuning, it actually does probably the best across the board. Where Affliction and Deathstroke might have some weaknesses, it seems like Demo's kind of covering them for the most part. It's probably the best single target spec that Warlock has if you're not, patchwork, if you don't have to like stay planted in your feet and never have to move. If you have to move a little bit, Demonology is definitely a little bit better than Deathstroke from what we know so far about 10.1. And even so, like, numbers can always change, and that's perfectly fine, but it is one of the best. And the AoE, if you're gonna go dungeons or if you have like an AoE raid fights, it's super accessible. You have about 3 ways to do AoE right now, and the simplest way being Implosion is the most straightforward. You make imps, you blow imps up. And that is satisfying for some reason. I don't know. I have to talk to my therapist about it.
So you basically raise up all your lovely and cuddly demons and pets.
You give them
to
names
just
too.
kill them.
Steve, Bob, and Amanda.
You just send them back.
Well, yeah, because they don't actually die, right?
Yeah,
They go into the net.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
But what about PI, Flame? How do you feel about PI on a Demonology Warlock?
That is... Listen.
Talk.
I have
Talking, Volker.
not been fortunate about being a recipient of the PI. However, I do know that PI is particularly strong. I know there's a sheet with, but I am 1% better with PI. I'm 2%. I'm 1.1, but here I get more. It's like, all right, listen. PI is obviously a thing, especially if you're, going to cutting edge raid or progress raid, or if like every % of damage is important. I feel like that kind of changes based on patches. For instance, Unholy is obviously one of the first classes or specs that come to mind with PI, but I feel like you're either getting it or not, and if you're in a situation where you have to get it, most likely your raid leader and or priests kind of know that, so that definitely changes, because obviously Haze gives you different breakpoints that you'll probably get into if you really like the spec and you want to advance. Obviously, Paste is good. I don't know. It's good.
Does it die?
PI?
No, the spec.
The spec? Well, no, I mean, it's a Warlock, man. Have you seen how tanky they are?
I know how tanky they are, but in terms of like comparing it, because maybe people will be like more interested in Destruction or Affliction if they're more tanky.
I don't know if there's a big difference between the two. Between the 3 rather. They pretty much have access to all of the tankiness from the class.
The general talent tree, yeah.
Yeah, so it's mostly, passive healing from Soul Leech, all of the cool defensives. It's more like, it has been kind of nerfed, right, son? I think it's been nerfed in the last 2 or 3 months.
It's always been a tanky spec. We had a tank spec in Pandaria or something, where you would pop
Wasn't it in
the
TBC
demon
too?
wings and the taunt things.
Oh, remember demonology, the
I
old
didn't play
demonology
that
where you
one.
pop into demonic form, which then got stolen by demon hunters?
yeah.
Metamorphosis?
Don't get me started.
Oh my god.
But that was so cool looking, man. I
Yeah.
remember that. It was
We had the meteor. You could fall from heights and just turn into a meteor and not take any falling damage. That was amazing. It felt so good. There was nowhere to use it, but it was amazing.
Oh yeah, the good old days of demonology. But you know, then demon hunters came along, and we all know how that turned out. It's all fine, okay? Demonology is still a beautiful spec to play. It sounds like it's very good. I don't think it's necessary for us to address a Warlock's utility anytime soon, because you will always want a Warlock in a raid, in a Mythic Plus scenario. It just has everything it needs to be there 100%, even if the damage is shit, which I don't think it will ever be, judging by the, you know, pure DPS class, all of that, blah, blah, blah. It's very useful, right? So we're not touching on that. If you want to play a Warlock, regardless of the spec, you're going to be wanted in any type of group just because of the teleport, the soul stones. Yeah, it's the summoning stone. It's a lot. Okay, they have a lot. How about CC wise? Now, talking about demonology and Mythic Plus, you need some CC in that bad boy over there. Does demonology bring enough to the table?
Well,
And don't tell me fears.
that's probably where demonology might lack definitely compared to the hunter. You do have an AoE stun. You do have fear. You do have which fear can work on depending
Fear
on the
is
situation. We are getting I forgot what its name is. When you fear stuff, it doesn't run away. I think
It's a cliff.
that's probably the best thing, right, son? Because I know you probably played demonology over the years a little bit more than I have, and
If
I don't know.
Fear mobs and
if
they
you-
run away into other mobs.
Exactly.
Can we have a F in the chat for this?
Jesus, man. Definitely.
We
never
still have
happened.
an F in chat for the the death coil. Because they run away
yeah,
when
death
Kale is
coil.
tanking. He's always like, why is that running away? Oh, well, I needed a heal.
That's actually a good point, because that's not oftenly used or thought about it that way. Mortal Coil that also fears, which is, I don't think it's a fear, it's a terror, right? Because fears can be broken. I think it's the game names it something weird, but it does heal you back, so you do have a lot of that.
20%, it's huge.
There might be a weird situation. They did address the interrupt that you kind of really have, but not really. It's a stun, but if the target cannot be stunned, you can still interrupt. So you might feel, you know, the range dilemma of like, okay, I cannot interrupt as many spells as I could, but I feel like there's a lot of things that demonology can make up for that in terms of CC where it might lack. And although you might not have as much CC, you do have party adjustment, like you mentioned. Hellstones are really good. They're basically like a mini cooldown, defensive cooldown for everybody. Soul stones, the battle res, and so on. So yeah, pluses and minuses, I suppose.
But okay, son, is there anything bad about demonology? Is there anything we can say bad about them? Because we're like, come on, there must be some.
It probably is a little bit. I mean,
There is
drawbacks.
something I dislike about demonology.
Oh, no.
You are a master of demons, right? You can summon all the demons, but you should only use one. You have your Felguard, right?
True.
You shouldn't choose your blue boy, voidwalker.
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 You talk about Blue Boy, I'm thinking about the jailer with the nipples. Stop it.
Stop
don't
it with the nipples.
You don't summon that.
You shouldn't use any of your other pets which have their own CCs, they have their own dispels, their own interrupts and all of that, because then you lose out on damage so much, you lose your main spells and main attacks, and I don't like this about it. Flame, how do you feel about this?
That's exactly true, because when you think of Beast Mastery, it's kind of like the opposite in terms of pet utility. Beast Mastery seems to be able to access all the pet utility without actually losing stuff. I mean,
That's a pet
Cats,
utility.
My demon
over
pet
there.
has arrived.
now that's an imp I haven't summoned yet. Where Beast Mastery can choose the pet that it needs based on the utility that it provides, whether it's Bloodlust, whether it's a defensive cooldown, whether it's heals or CC. You get what you get with demonology, and that kind of, you know, will stick a little bit where you just have a stun or silence, but most likely stun. And also, my personal issue with it is that it has a travel time. It's a projectile, so if your pet is here and the caster is there and you click your stun, It travels in space.
It takes its time. I mean, it's not the...
Especially if it's on a different target.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I don't feel it's the end of the world.
No.
It is a drawback for sure, but I think all of the other positives regarding the spec are like overshadowing this. So yeah, you are not actually like able to make use of all. Well, you can make use of all the demons, but you're really required to have, you know, specific ones, which is a shame in some capacity. But once again, how do you guys see demonology being like in will it be in the meta 10 super speculative at this point? Would you guys see it as being like one of the top picks in PvE content next patch?
I can.
People are wondering about this too, right?
I can essentially answer. I've done a little bit of research, but it might not be complete yet.
I've done no research about it, but I think Warlock in general is always going to be with one spec in the meta. Demonology generally being very good in single target. Maybe not one patch or another, but I do think that it is going to be there. It is fun to play and it has good damage, it has good utility, good survivability, speed. It has 50% speed. It's insane. Like constant. You can just pop it and have it forever, and the healers are like, oh look, I can pat on this guy.
That's how you get the extra HPS. So far from what we've known from the 10.1 raid testing and M+, Demonology is probably one of the better specs out there. Obviously, numbers are always subject to change, and we're currently seeing a lot of tuning for live. So although we cannot say, you know, Demonology is number 1 or number 2 or number 3, I can definitely assure you that number is definitely a reason. It's partially one of the main reasons why I'm considering Warlock, because my other options are not that great at dealing damage, and although damage is not something that we would probably recommend you use as a main criteria to choose a main, it's probably very helpful, especially if you're pushing content, because obviously if you noodle damage, it's not gonna do anything, man.
Damage is not something we recommend you do. I'm joking. I'm joking. Listen.
Just don't clip that, man.
Listen. Going back to Sunshade's point, Demonology being like more potent on single target and the raid being much more focused on single target, I can potentially see
for sure.
Demonology being up there in terms of like performance. So if you're interested on being like super meta, super like on top of the meters, I think Demonology would be a safe bet unless the tuning just squashes it onto the ground. We don't know exactly how they're gonna like pan out all of the numbers for different specs.
I think even if that's the case, they've shown a pretty big initiative at, you know, fixing that stuff since the beginning of Dragonflight, where it was like really strong at the beginning, then it kind of dropped off, and over the course of the couple of months we kept seeing buffs to its single target, to Wild Imps damage, to the Felguard damage as well. So they're pretty much on top of the, you know, the damage profile.
True.
So even if you see like, oh my god, I don't know if my spec is gonna do damage, they love their Demonology. They're gonna buff it. I think it's gonna be fine from that perspective, if it's something that people might be worried about.
Cool.
At least I hope it will be. It's one of my favorite specs. It has to be good.
Yeah.
That's the main reason for it. But the question remains, you fools, would you recommend Demonology Warlock to be a main for people in 10.1? You give it a thumbs up?
100%.
Always.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up for Demonology. Summon all of the demons that you see in the game except the Doomguard, but that's not a problem. You're going to slap in single target. You have talent diversity, you have playstyle diversity. If you don't like something, you can take another stuff. You're gonna do a lot of damage because they're buffing. You're super tanky. You are going to love Demonology.
Perfect.
And you may not know this, but you can interrupt while mounted.
Ooh.
Now
What?
that's something, because I never want to dismount when my time
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure this is intended, but I noticed a lot in dungeons, Warlocks can interrupt because your pet actually interrupts, so you're still mounted running towards the pack. You press your interrupt, it's interrupted, you're still mounted.
And you're gonna be.
And then you go like 5 meters forward, yards, whatever, and then you start blasting.
Yeah,
It's actually great.
The first to interrupt wins a cookie all the time. We all know this, especially if like there's a mage over there. Good mana buns. Hey. Yeah, but hey, let us know in the comments if you're thinking about maining Demonology Warlock, and if not, why is that? Maybe you're interested in Affliction or Destruction. Where do you think all of these specs sit in terms of like potential mains for 10.1? As always, thank you Patreons for supporting the content. We love y'all. Want to join the fam that way? Just check the link in the description. There's a lot of goodies waiting for you over there. And thank you for watching the video.
Thank you, Sunshade, and have a great weekend.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.